everyone. Welcome to ExtremePride.com. I am Coach Paul of the network, and today I have a special guest with me, China McCarney of Jaeger Sports, and we are going to go ahead and talk about something today that we are both super passionate about, and that is getting youth athletes, the youth pitchers, prepared for the season the right way. And so one of the questions that we get a lot during this time of year is, how do I get my pitchers ready? What throwing programs do I need to do? When should I get on a mound? Stuff like that. So today we're going to tackle a few of those topics. And then after that, we'll go ahead and give you guys a timeline that you guys can use for your pitchers to help them be as prepared as possible with the timeline that we have to get them ready for the season to get on the mound and compete. So first things first, I want to go ahead and introduce China. China and I go back to college, and right now he is joining us from Southern California.
Yes.
Which is awesome and probably a lot nicer than here right now. But China and I played at Cal State University Northridge together, and then afterwards we ended up parting ways. And I am out here in the greater St. Louis area, and he's still back at home in Southern California, and both surprisingly doing something very similar through different avenues. So, China, you want to go ahead and just take a moment and kind of give us an idea what Jaeger Sports, who are you guys and what do you do?
Yeah, no problem at all. First off, thanks for having me on for sure. I'm excited. Like you said, we parted ways, but it's pretty cool how the world of athletics brings people back more often than not. It's a small world, so it's cool that we're both sticking to what we're most passionate about, and that's the game of baseball. So that's first and foremost is the passion for baseball. But no, I've been with Jaeger Sports for 16 years now. It's kind of frightening, that number. But went to my first camp when I was 12 years old. I met Alan one of those days. It was a 4-day camp. He came out one of those days, and looked at him as kind of like a mythical creature, Alan Jaeger of Jaeger Sports. And our relationships evolved over the years, and I fell in love with the program. I fell in love with the physical part of the program pretty early when I felt what it did to my body and my arm, and I loved that there wasn't any cookie cutting. It was every athlete's an individual, and you could be yourself. And so I love that. And then as I got older, obviously I fell in love with the mental aspects and the intricacies of the program and the stuff we're going to talk about today.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. And here's a quick question for you. Estimate it, how many J-bands do you guys go through a year?
Whew. Well, I have a pretty close estimate. I'd say it's going up every year, which is awesome because of guys like you and our community that we're passionate about and that's passionate about the J-bands. But I'd say probably 55 to 60,000 right now on a given year. So, which is good. That means there's people caring about arm health and arm care.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's awesome. That's a lot of rubber there.
Yeah.
Okay. So, basically, with that, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and really go through three main areas that we would love for coaches and players and parents to kind of just be able to take away from this conversation so that they can implement them with their athletes. Because at the end of the day, it's about making sure that kids are healthy and that they're developing the right way so that when they're of proper age and they really want to start throwing, that heat, what we call it, their body's going to allow them to, they're going to be prepared for it. And one thing at times that we do see on the field is a lot of the younger kids, especially, they've got 10 minutes before they show up to practice or at least till practice starts, and they just get a baseball and they play catch with little Johnny, and it's just boom, 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 as hard as I can for 10 minutes. Then by the time you're done with practice, your arm's throbbing, So there is a way to get around that, and we're going to go ahead and kind of dive into those topics to help in those areas. So first thing that we want to dive into is coaches implementing a pre-throwing system. It's also known as arm care. Everyone kind of has heard that phrase before, that arm care system. China, what would something like that look like if you guys were out in the ball field doing a clinic or if you were working with someone?
Well, the best way, and we talked a little bit about this before, but the best way that I've ever heard it explained is if we're going to run a sprint, let's say I give you 10 minutes, you're going to run a 60-yard dash in 10 minutes for your best time of all time. You're going to break 8 seconds for the first time ever, right? You're going to make sure you run, you jog, you stretch, get blood flow, heat, range of motion, everything going to your legs so that you're putting yourself in the best possible position to perform that task. And so arm care to me looks the exact same for the arm and the muscles that we use to throw a baseball. I mean, like you said before we came on air, it was, it's one of the most unnatural movements is throwing something overhand. We're not designed to do that. Yeah. And so to think that picking up a ball out of a bucket and throwing it to your buddy for 5 minutes as hard as you can is putting you in a healthy position is insanity, or any other negative word you want to use. So to me, arm care just looks like preparing the body to work out for throwing. And for us, it's arm circles, it's J bands, any band exercises, anything that's going to get range of motion, blood flow, and heat to the areas you're going to use before you perform is what arm care would look like to me, for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really important. There's what I tend to work with my athletes and tell them, what I try to draw them to is this idea of 3 different phases when they're getting ready to throw any given day. And that's that pre-throwing phase, the arm care phase, and then there's throwing phase or throwing progression, then you have a post-throwing phase. And I would say, honestly, what I see kids where they're really consistent with is usually just 1 out of 3. They're really consistent with the throwing part. It's the before and the after where they need a little bit more guidance, a little bit more help. And once they learn the exercises, they fall in love with it. They fall in love with J-bands. They fall in love with the circles. Well, some do. Not most. The arm circles are a little bit different. The bands are cool, because you get strapped up and, you got this idea that you're warming up your muscles and you're working out and whatnot. But yeah, you do arm circles. We do also arm raises and stuff, just at different angles. And like you said, trying to get blood flow, trying to activate the muscles. So that's good. That's what you would do before throwing. I love that. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's important to realize for coaches, players, anybody, that those 3 phases are all equally important. And it'd be hard to convince a player that loves to throw. Throwing's fun. You get to see how far you throw, how hard you throw. It's fun. It's tangible. You can see it. But all 3 phases, the 3 phases we're talking about, the pre-throwing routine, the actual throwing program itself, and then the post-throwing routine are equally important, because if you neglect one of them, it's going to affect the other. And it's going to affect the most important one, which is the throwing. If you're not doing your pre-throwing routine the way you should, or as many reps, or with as much attention to detail, you're going to put your arm in a scary situation, in a vulnerable situation. And the last thing you want to have happen is sit out a season because of an injury that could have possibly been avoided. And so it's just, I just want to make that point, it's like you're talking about, the 3 phases are all equally important, at least to me. And so I think it's all good stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. And so once you're done completing that, and it doesn't have to take very much time, you can go ahead anywhere from 5 to, I've seen guys do it in, 7 minutes or whatnot. It doesn't take a big chunk of time to do that. And it is very important. The next thing I want to talk about is a throwing progression. And so I'll go ahead and let you introduce that, and then I'll go ahead on the back end and kind of highlight what kids in our area, since we have a little bit more weather than you do, I can go ahead and kind of share on that. But now we're throwing, now we're ready. Do I just grab a baseball and get warmed up as fast as I can?
Unfortunately, that's what you see most often, is throwing the ball on a line as hard as you can for 5 to 10 minutes and then going into practice. Or I want to go hit, I want to take BP, or I want to get on a mound. And, just like the arm circles and the bands or the stretching and the prepping, the first part of your throwing progression or our long toss routine is still about stretching. It's still about opening the shoulder joint up slowly but surely as you move out away from your partner. And what it looks like to us is you're just slowly, incrementally moving away from your partner. You've got arc on the ball. We're not throwing on a line at the beginning of our throwing program. You're throwing with arc. You're letting that shoulder joint open up as much as possible, as far as you can. And then when you're in training mode and you've done the prep work for weeks at a time and you're in training mode, it's taking that distance that we achieve. Let's just use 300 feet is always an easy number we like to use. If we go out to 300 feet, that's phase 1. We've gone out now. We call it the stretching out phase, which stretching out is the title of the first part of our throwing progression, because it's still stretching, believe it or not. And then the pull down phase is when you bring that 300 feet distance every single throw on a line into your partner to your position specific distance, which for us, we're talking about pitchers, 60 feet, 6 inches. For younger kids, it might be 52 feet or 48 feet, whatever it is. All that's changing is your focal point, where you aim with your eyes before you throw, and your release point, to ensure that you're continuing to hit your throwing partner in the chest or at the waist, wherever you're training to do, but you're not letting up. You're using that 300-foot mentality. So then you're ensuring maximum velocity and maximum arm strength by doing so. So that's kind of what our progression looks like in terms of our actual throwing program.
Nice. And then, yeah, you get that build up, and then boom, then you start putting that pedal to the metal as they come in. And that's the biggest challenge for, I would say, a lot of the athletes out here in the Midwest, is because we have inclement weather. And so a lot of coaches ask, what should I be doing in a cage? What can I do? And if you think about it, you can simulate stretching it out as best as possible, throwing to a net, So if you're in a cage, what you can do is try as best as you can to have your athletes go through that progressive feeling. But as they get more warmed up, they can begin to throw that ball at a higher angle or at an incline angle. And what that will do is it will start to simulate that arc. And once they feel like, okay, if I was on the field, this is where I feel like I'm good, I'm stretched out, I'm as far back as I can get, then they can go ahead and start pulling that ball down, like you said, throwing it through their partner all the way back in. So that's a good way to do it. It's an efficient way. We have lots of athletes that do that on a weekly basis, and it helps them out every year. It's not a perfect world, where you're outside, but it's going to be better than doing absolutely nothing or staying on that line throughout your entire throwing progression. So that's good. That's good stuff right there. And that, another thing I see too sometimes is coaches, sometimes they feel that pressure, with time about, well, I can't give my kids too much time to throw, because then we're running into our hitting and our defense and stuff like that. And, what I really usually say to that is, you try to figure out if you can start splitting things up instead of trying to work on all skill sets on just one practice. Make one day out of the week your throwing day, with your pitchers, especially if you're going to be throwing bullpens. Give them that opportunity. Give them 20 minutes. Give them 30 minutes to prepare the right way. And they're going to build that foundation up a lot more, efficiently, and be able to last through the season versus, every practice I'm crunching for time, so I'm just warming up as fast as possible, never giving myself a chance to build that foundation up. And therefore, like we said earlier, I get middle of the season, and now my number one guy is down. He's regressing. He's too sore to pitch, and I can't pitch him anymore. So,
right. No, and I think that's a huge point. We get that question constantly, probably every clinic we do, because we purposely throw for a long period of time. We throw for 37, 45, as many minutes as we can, just to show what it actually takes to train an arm. And we're showing the training mode where you're kind of doing it on your own. That's the example we're using. But when we get the question, I don't have 37 minutes for kids to throw. Okay, but do you have 20 instead of 10? Yeah. You have 25 instead of 15, whatever you're doing. And like you said, it just comes down to prioritizing as a coach. Do I want 9 weapons on defense? Or do I want guys that are a liability in the outfield, but they can hit a tiny bit better, or their fundamentals are good on catching a fly ball? I want 9 weapons on defense personally, especially as a pitcher. We want guys behind us that can throw the ball. And so exactly. It's just implementing and allocating the proper time to make it a priority. At least once or twice a week, let the arm eat for 15, 20 minutes and see what's in there. And if you prioritize, and like you said earlier, it takes a lot less time than people think it does. Like, to go through our arm circles and J-bands, we've timed it when we're not talking and we're just rolling through. It's about 9 to 12 minutes usually to do both. That's all the arm circles and the J-bands. 9 to 12 minutes for arm health. To me, that's a pretty easy transaction.
That is. Well, you guys are mountain ninjas, so you're throwing ninjas. So if I'm a youth pitcher, it might be even a little less for them, because they're probably not doing the hundreds of arm circles that you guys knock out.
Yes.
Every single clinic.
It'd be less time for sure. So
yeah. That was like one thing I always remember from Jim. Jim and Alan, they would come in and they'd just be like, "All right, arm circles," and then you're sitting there, you're like, They're demonstrating, or they're doing this workout.
No, Jim is I call him a manimal, like an animal, but a manimal. He, to this day, to me, I'd put him up against anybody in the world with arm circles with 3 baseballs in their hand. It's comical. Like, he just can do hundreds, like you said. He'll just keep going and look at you like, you're tired right now? Why are you tired? Like, I'm just getting warmed up. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So that leads us to that third topic today, which would then be our timeline. And actually, before we get there, so I didn't have this in my notes, but I really want to hit this too, because we did say it in the beginning. We talked about a pre-throwing system, post-throwing system. That is also very important. It's just like getting done with a workout. For me not to be as sore the next day, as stiff, I need to make sure that I'm also stretching out afterwards, just a light cool down. And so I don't know what you guys do. We tend to have guys go through their sleeper stretch, and they'll do different exercises. One's called a hang low exercise, where they're just kind of bending at the waist, and either their glove or whatever they want to use. Our guys use a plyo ball, and they just open up their shoulder doing circles. So there are ways to do post-throwing, and again, that doesn't take a lot of time. That's also going to allow that arm to be able to keep its range of motion and its mobility after going through the throwing part, which is, it's a workout, essentially, is what throwing is. So.
Yeah, no, and that's a huge part. And that's where, as a coach, it gets fun, because you get to put responsibility on the player, because you can make it mandatory and it's effective way. But for the most part, it would be after a game, after a practice, when everything's done for the day. This is at least how we do it, is they would do their external band. So there's only 3 exercises. And then I love what you were talking about with the sleeper stretches, anything like that that's going to help, again, with range of motion and blood flow, because I won't get crazy into the science, but I heard it explained by somebody. Every time you throw, you're micro tearing stuff, ligaments, muscles, all that stuff. And the way your body heals it is with blood, oxygen, all that complicated stuff I don't even care about. Anything you can do. That's why poles became popular, because you were getting blood flow kind of through the whole body. And so anything you can do to make sure there's blood going to those specific muscles, it's going to help with recovery, and it's going to help the next day. It's going to be like, wow, I feel a lot better than I usually do. And when you're talking youth baseball, a lot of times your best pitcher is your best shortstop, and you don't want your shortstop feeling like poo on Sunday because he threw a bunch of pitches on Saturday.
Yeah.
And so he does some post-throwing stuff. He's going to set himself up for tournaments better than he might have if he's not doing it. So, Good point.
All right, cool. So that leaves us with timeline. And so with coaches right now, they've had their kids probably for about a month or so, at least here in the Midwest. January is usually when most teams start coming together. And so, at this point, is there still time for them to build that foundation up, to work on these things before the season, and then still feel like I've gotten enough time in to build my foundation versus, and I don't know if I do have enough time, and maybe next year we'll work on it. What would you say to that?
Yeah, no, well, at least, so for the youth level, I would say 3 to 4 weeks is plenty of time to take an athletic arm, and create health and strength for an entire season, like to prepare it and get it ready. For professional guys, college guys, high school guys, we like 4 to 6 weeks more. If you have 4 to 6 weeks to map out kind of, and really and that's where you get into the crawl, the walk. You're not pulling down except for maybe 1 day a week. But timeline-wise for me with youth players, I would say if you have 3 or 4 weeks before a season and you get them on whatever progression you want, whatever throwing program you want, they're going to have enough time to set a base in their arm, because it's all about setting the base so that, like when I talk to my guys, I want a graph that looks like this at the end of a season. I don't want a graph that looks like this because we worked out, we did good, and then I'm sore. Yeah, exactly. That crazy like up and down graph. You want guys getting stronger throughout the year. And so to me and to us, and probably to you, the first 3 to 5 weeks you have with your athletes, to me, is the most important in terms of setting a foundation of arm strength, arm health for the entire season. Because if you don't do that right, and then games start, it's a recipe for a very unfun season and a very troubleshooting season. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. You're holding on for dear life. My arm hurts really bad today, but I'm going to get through it. And then you're setting yourself back. So I'd say 3 to 4 weeks of throwing progression would be ideal, at least in my eyes. So I don't know what your thoughts are, and what do you do with your athletes?
No, yeah, that's really good. It's very similar, for us, because there's a little bit more mechanical things that we're not going to dive in today and talk about, but we really spend the first, we probably go a little bit more extended. I'd say 8 to 10 with the first 2 or 3 really focusing on arm action, proper arm action, stuff like that. And it's very light throwing. And then from there, yeah, we do that. We knock it out probably usually, I'd say, anywhere from that 4 to 6 week range, just to give that athlete the best chance. So, again, we control that. I know sometimes coaches, with them starting in January, they always can't. They feel that pressure of having to hurry through it. But 3 to 4 weeks is definitely doable, and it's better than nothing. It's a really good start. And then take it even through the season. Continue with this process. Don't just stop because now you're in season. You're going to carry this through to help you maintain and further develop and stay strong through the season. So,
yeah.
Anyways, I want to go ahead and just thank you so much, China, for being here. We're going to go ahead and shoot a bunch of links all over the place for you guys so that you can have a bunch of information. I know China also wants to go ahead and share something real quick if you want to take that fancy-dancy.
We have, because of questions like this that we get all the time with coaches wondering about, how long does it take to prep an arm? How many days a week? This and that. We get it from pro guys all the time. What should I be doing? This and that. Alan Jaeger actually wrote a book on it's basically a long, frequently asked questions book that he's dealt with for 25 years. And it's the Jaeger Sports Throwing Manual. You can see it here. And it's literally a year-round breakdown of exactly what we're talking about. Prepping an arm. Keeping an arm healthy during the season. What do you do after the season? How much time should you take off before you ramp it back up again? And so, it just hit me today when we were talking about doing this and coming on. It's a really good kind of snapshot of the whole year of what it looks like pre-throwing, like we talked about, during throwing, like we talked about, and then post-throwing stuff to keep arms healthy, because that's what we're about. That's what you're about. It's what we're passionate about. We love seeing kids play. And you can't play if you're not healthy. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate it and look forward to more to come of these. And, hopefully coaches and parents and athletes, they'll find this productive and something that will just give them some insight on how to do exactly what you just said.
Absolutely.
So, awesome, dude. Well, I appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you for having me on. It was a blast.
You guys enjoy your Southern California weather.
Enjoy your Midwest weather.
Hey, we are right now. It's actually pretty nice right now. It's not bad. It's supposed to get cold again, so we'll see.
Yeah.
All right, dude. Take it easy.
Sounds good.